here, I'll just call up somebody and say, hey, somebody needs to sit in this chair.
No, because the thing about it is if I think that you're waiting on me, I still ain't rushing anyway. So
I know, there's no.
that's not going to bother me at all because you'll wait and then you'll get nothing done.
Good morning. Welcome to our budget assumptions, projections, and priorities for fiscal year 2020 budget development. Everybody wait for
I thought so too.
Today is Wednesday, March 6, 2019. It is currently 9:02 a.m. We're in the city chambers, and I call this meeting to order.
Well, I was hoping they would swing it.
I'm not saying swing the camera, just keep it right there.
Those present to move forward to this, Commissioner Luke, Commissioner Emmerich, Commissioner Carasone, and myself, Vice Mayor, will be here shortly. We also have City Attorney Slayton. We have City Manager Lear. Please, reminders to turn off your cell phones, put them on vibrate. If we have public comment, they come in. If you're watching this on your way in, fill out a card and you pass it to the police officer over here to my right, and we'll get it in the right place. So let's get this started. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Flag is behind me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Seeing no public comment currently, so we will move on to the presentation. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor.
Before you go, I do want to clarify. Before you go, I do want to clarify that we are on a strict time constraint. We will not go past noon today, so we need to address this whole thing accordingly as we're going through. So, City Manager.
Thank you again, Mayor. So this is the kickoff to our budget season. This is where we go over the assumptions, projections, and priorities. I'm going to introduce as well our new Finance Director, Kim Farrell.
Good morning.
Good morning. Did you wave at the camera yet?
Thank you. Good morning.
So we are going to tag team this presentation. This is, like I said, to identify what kind of assumptions we're making to prepare the budget for this year. Hear from you all if there's anything specific you want us to know, and keep in mind as we're preparing the documents that we'll bring you later on. And what your commission priorities are beyond the ones you've already told us throughout the year and through strategic planning. And with that, I'm going to let Kim handle the first few slides, and then I'll pick up after that.
Okay, we can switch over to the, moving into the first slide. This provides the budget compared to the actual for the past 3 years. I think that we can look at the last two columns just in the form of, hey, here we are getting ready to project our 20 budget. What did we do for 19? So if you look at the second to the last column, that's the actual for 18. That is unaudited. That's at the end of the year. We can see that we projected and then budgeted an increase of about 7.5 million. These are only major revenues. This is not the total. This is just the ones that we consider to be major, and they're across funds. They're general fund, the districts, all of that. The ones that we picked out as major. So we, again, projected and then budgeted a 7.5% increase, and the majority of those were within 4 of those categories. The first was property taxes, and that one went up 1.6 million. The next was district assessments. That's up 1.6 million.
Before we jump off that, and keep in mind that property tax went up solely because of building and increased value. As you remember, we left the millage rate the same from the previous year. So through the work with the commission last year, I just wanted to make sure everybody doesn't think we're raising the rates last year. We didn't. We kept the rate the same. We were able to bring in more money due to values and new construction.
Thanks goes to you. It was great pencil work.
And the third category where we had a significant increase was impact fees of 1.4 million, and then infrastructure sales surtax of 2.3 million.
So was that estimated increase quite accurate?
We're not really far enough through the year to say. So far, it looks accurate, but we're very early to be able to say that we hit it right on or we were a little bit off. Okay. If there are no questions on that one, we'll move on. Okay.
Real quick, where
Yes.
are you from?
I am originally from Tallahassee, so this
All right,
is,
because you said on. Boom, boom.
we are.
Instead of on, instead of a little closer to the way I would say it.
Yes, it's about a South Georgia accent, basically, because I grew up about 5 miles from the Georgia line.
That makes sense.
So, yes.
Fantastic. I'm liking better already.
Okay, so moving on to the next one. This is fund balances, the changes to fund balance over the past 3 years. For the main funds that you would be probably interested in looking at, there are no significant changes to any of them, but we did want to present this information for you to see.
And this is with the new calculations that we put
Well,
in
that's
place
going to be on the
last
next
year.
slide. You're ahead of me, but we're almost there. So if there are no questions here, we'll move to that one, which this is, I think, the first time the bottom section has been presented in these assumptions. So the top is taking the current or the 18 ending fund balance. The budgeted changes to it are the first 2 lines. Those are anything we budgeted to spend during the budget cycle, and then roll forwards are the committed fund balance, the next line. And then the next 2 lines are the one calculating the 20% based on the new policy that was recently adopted, and then the next line is calculating the 10%. So remember, it's a range of 5 to 10%. We did calculate it at the 10%, so we presented this as if we were going to do the maximum. So what that does for the general fund, road and drainage, and fire rescue district is put us into we're under. We don't have enough fund balance to reserve that full 10% maximum. So that was the main thing I wanted to point out on this slide.
And remind everybody, we are in compliance, we are above the 5% though.
Yeah.
So we're in compliance with the policy. We're in that 5 to 10% range. We haven't made it to the 10, but we haven't fallen below the 5.
If we were to calculate it,
That's why there's a range.
Yep.
if we were to calculate it at the 5% for the general fund, we would have $917,000 in excess above that 5% minimum. For road and drainage, it would be $24,000. Fire rescue, it would be $300,000.
Next question. If we drop below 5%, what would happen? Would you tell us like immediately that happened, and then we would?
Before it happened, we'd notify you. The things that would cause that, like we just have a budget amendment on there. So when we're doing that, you know, one of the things we attach is a fund balance spreadsheet to the budget amendment so that you all can see. And if we were to bring you a budget amendment that would take you below the 5%, we would make you aware at that time. If something was, as you all know, we can't use more than we budgeted. That's by law. So the only way this would happen is through a budget amendment process for us to go below the 5, and we would let you know before you approve that budget amendment. And according to the policy, then you have to replenish that in the following year, and if you can't because it's too much, then you have to come up with a plan to do it over a period of time.
And you may have noticed a slightly different format on the last budget amendment that was brought, and that was the 2 columns that showed not only the impact of what does this amendment do to the actual fund balance, but also what does it do to the required minimum amount and what's left after it. So we'll make sure you know that every time.
Thank you.
Okay, the next slide is the same information, but for a couple of different funds. I'm sorry, for the renewal and replacement funds, which did not have the minimums calculated. So this is basically the budgeted activity for these funds, what we expect to do to fund balance this in 19.
This is commission members. Last year, we broke that from one fund into these 6 different funds, so that it wasn't, you know, the renewal and replacement prior to last year was all in one fund. And we tracked it internally, but somebody just looking at it couldn't tell on their own how much belonged to which of the districts and which to general fund and to fleet. So they've been broken into individual funds this year. It'll actually, during the budget that we're in right now, we broke them into the individual funds, so now you can see it a little more clearly.
Can I ask a question? So if you go back to number 4, where it shows those deficits, per se, and then you add slide 5, there really isn't a deficit. We just split them up, which kind of created this deficit.
That is one way to look at it, yes.
Yeah, isn't it?
But the reason we put this in here is so that we wouldn't have to have the spikes and have Commission actually or anybody take the money out of renewal and replacement to make up for a 1-year or 2-year shortfall, so that as the equipment was needed, the funding would be there.
And so slide 4, if we can go back to that, these are the contingency emergency disaster fund, the 20% itself is
It's fully funded.
fully funded.
Yep. And so is the 5 out of the 10% of the budget stabilization and economic uncertainty. We're
Why
just
is it
not-
showing a negative though if it's completely funded? I understand.
Well, the
question.
10% is not, the 5% is, and
So we're
we always show
4.2
you
away
what the
from-
maximum is, so you can see it, and it shows that we're, for instance, in the general fund column, we're $1.2 million below the maximum.
Okay, which column?
Page
So on
4.
Page 4, if you look in the general fund, the very first column for general fund, the bottom number shows a negative $1.2 million,
Right.
which is how much we're short of being at the full
But I'm
maximum.
not talking about that negative, go up to, and where it's talking about the 20% of the contingency, that's a deficit of over 8 million. So why is that showing a deficit if it's completely,
That one's actually, it's just showing a negative number because it's a math column. It starts at the 12.9 million at the top, and you start taking things away from it.
you're subtracting it out?
Yep.
Okay, instead of showing a negative, you're showing a,
Right.
okay, thank you.
It's coming out of the beginning.
When it comes back with more clearer picture, can we get the 5% as well as the 10% side by side? So that
Absolutely.
we know that
Yes.
balance in between, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep, when we bring you
Yeah.
at the first workshop, we'll make sure we have that information
Exactly.
displayed for you all.
Thank you, because I think that would help us also to see where we truly are, where we could be, and a range, that range that we have.
don't want to fall under the 5%. So
Yeah, we can't.
can you just explain?
Right.
Yeah.
What happens if you do?
Want to, because then it's naughty, but
I believe
Yeah.
the policy says if you do drop below the 5, you'll restore it.
by the next year.
Yeah, but it'll play a huge role in our bonding numbers, and it could be a detrimental, so.
Yeah, we don't want to, absolutely.
Put you behind the 8 ball, and I want to be there.
Thank you.
So catching back up to, I think we were up to slide 6, provide some economic indicators. The first set is good news. The unemployment rate is down from 2017 to 18 for the county, the state, and national, all the numbers. So you can see for Sarasota County, it went from 3.2 down to 3.1. The next group is permitting activity. For these, yes.
Isn't that amazing with all the people moving down here,
Yes.
that we're still employing those people who come down? That's a lot of jobs opening. I mean, when you think about it, because there's 1,000 people a day come across that border.
Yep.
So you gotta have jobs for all those people, so.
And we think about that 5% unemployment is considered full employment, basically, economically. It may not look like a huge difference, go to 3.2 to 3.1, but you can, when you're that far below the 5% standard, you're not gonna go huge drops beyond that. So any improvement is always it's great. And yes, with all the people moving in and still having jobs for them, it's even more
It
impressive.
shows the health of Florida right now.
Okay, so then the next section for permitting activity, we had projected or estimated 1,200 for 2019, and we're on track to meet and actually exceed that projection currently. Same thing for commercial square feet, we estimated 120,000, and we're at approximately 155,000 already today, so that's incredible. And that does include Braves Stadium, Braves Academy, and Publix.
As you know,
Does
That's a big,
include them.
it does.
But no wonder.
and as you know, the single-family residences, those kind of, you can track them with a trend. The commercial comes in big blocks. So as we stated in previous years, you might be at $10,000 and then all of a sudden, or 10,000 square feet, and all of a sudden one thing comes in and you've met your whole budget. So, but to already be there, that's awesome.
So for those single-family sales in 2018, there were 11,752 with a median price of $269,000.
That's
And
gotta be an increase.
It is.
Significant, I would think.
And that also, 3,840 condominiums with a medium sales price of $225,000.
It's over 1,000 a month
That's incredible.
between the two, it's over.
Okay, the next slide provides some additional economic indicators, and these are from the Bureau of Economic and Business Research. You can see that for the population trends, it would be at 70,631 for 2018, and that's up from 60,000 in just 2014. That's incredible growth. That's at a 6% average annual growth. And then moving over to per capita income, we're at about 3.1 average annual growth, and that's up to, in 2020, 52,250.
Those are good numbers.
I think so too.
All right. Now we'll get to some of the key revenue projections. These are what we plan.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, ma'am.
The per capita, is that household?
Per capita, yes,
Household, not individual, correct?
I believe so.
Actually,
I
I believe
think
it's the other way. I believe it's
individual.
individual. Per
Yeah,
capita would be
per person.
individual. It's per person.
So,
Probably, yeah.
fellow commissioners, we don't make that.
Yeah. We know.
So some of the key projections that we're using to build the budget on, we're assuming that the ad valorem taxes will have a 5% increase. It's a good chance it'll be above that, but for building the budget until we get some real numbers, we're gonna go with a 5%.
You mean just in growth alone?
In value is total, the amount of revenue we'll bring in for ad valorem. We're assuming a 5% increase. Whether or not it'll be more than that, there's a good chance it'll be more than that again this year, just looking at the new homes, that value alone. But from planning perspective of starting the budget, it's much easier to start with a conservative number, and then when we get some real numbers at the end of June, then to have that revenue, then you can move some things. It's a lot easier to add to the budget than it is to take away at that
Oh,
point.
yeah.
You did
So-
5% last year too, didn't you?
Yep, that was an increase from previous years where we went with 3. But I think you know me well enough to know that if I'm putting 5 in there, I'm pretty confident it'll be higher than that. I'm not gonna put 5 in there if I think it'll be lower.
So how does this impact if we were to roll back rates and make it the same amount that comes in? Then you would only be able to attribute the growth side
Correct.
of it.
Yep.
So would that reduce that 5% number?
Well, right now, we're going to, short answer, probably would.
Okay.
Because if we went with the rollback rate, the only increase we would have would be for new
Growth.
homes.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd lose all of the increase in value.
Okay. So we will definitely need those numbers, those projections,
Mhm.
the rollback rate, what does that put us in our ad valorem increase? And if we stayed the same, what
Yep.
does that do? And if, say, we raised by,
Until we get the actual numbers
know,
at
it's
the end of May,
hard.
we
This
can't
is
tell you
all-
what the rollback rate will be. What we would do is assume the same amount of ad valorem revenue,
yeah.
because we don't know what the growth number is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the rollback rate, part of it's designed to bring the same amount, but allowing you to have more for growth. We don't get the growth number, sometimes we don't get that one until the end of June. We get a preliminary number at the end of May, and it's up to the property appraiser's office whether or not they have it broken out to include a growth number or not. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
So can we internally by just our permits and stuff, kind of get an idea of our growth number?
We can get an idea of the number of homes, but not the value.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because that'll be all over the place.
Yep.
I
And
gotcha.
Somebody who bought a home last year, I can tell you the same size home depended not only on location, but on the builder. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's why, the permit will just tell us the size of the house. It won't tell us the value.
That makes sense. All right, thank you.
So you see up here, we're going with 5%, like I mentioned on the ad valorem, 5% utility service tax, communication service tax. We're going with no change at all in that. It's, for the last several years, been minimal ups and downs. You've heard me say this before, it's designed to go up, but it's not, due to the fact that people like myself who don't have home phones anymore, that's just not not doing what it was designed to do.
And I'll tell you, Comcast and all those guys are getting away from landlines.
Yes.
Phones.
Yep. The electric franchise fee, we're gonna go with the 3% is what we're projecting. The half-cent sales tax is 6%, and the revenue sharing an 8% increase. And you'll see on the next slide, we have some dollars assigned to those. See, and keep in mind, these are just those revenue sources. There's a bunch of smaller revenue sources, but there'll be minimal changes one way or the other. These are the ones that are likely to have a sizable dollar amount. Those items combined, about $1,368,900 is what the plan is for those, based on the assumptions we've made. Now for our general fund operating costs, our forecasting model we're using is a 2% increase in operating expenditures due to inflation. For employee salaries, this does not include any change in personnel or level of service. This is just a 3.5% salary growth. And obviously we'd follow all of the union contracts, and we've broken that out down there below. PBA has 4% unless they're maxed out. They would get a 2% at that point. AFSCME has a 1.5%, and IAFF ranges between 3 and 7% based on their career progression plan. And the general fund employees are, this year, were 3, 3.5, and 4 based on performance. So as an overall average, what we went with is the 3.5%. As far as for the cost of living portion that Commission approved last year, this year the cost of living based on the index, it will be a 0.4% increase. As you remember, it was 1.5% last year. It's tied to the index, and that index right now is showing at 0.4%. So that's what that would be.
Does that change, by the way, as we get clearer numbers, or that's kind of it?
I'm not sure if we've got the final number for that one yet. We'll monitor it and update you guys on that one, but I believe that is for the time period that we're supposed to have.
Okay. I was just curious.
We definitely defined that in the plan when we brought it forward to you all. Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't remember what the month was we said where that would take effect, but we'll look into that and get that back to you. Then, there's always the costs associated with capital projects, the ongoing staffing and operational costs, as well as maintenance. Those will all be brought forward. But as you all, I'm sure, have seen on many of the capital projects, a lot of them, costs of capital are going up, and they're going up rapidly. The downside to an increasing economy is increasing costs. Here are some of we just wanted to highlight, some of the costs of the collective bargaining agreements. These are the ones we are following, and give you the amount for the upcoming year. It's for the PBA is $278,200, and for the IAF is $420, of which approximately half of that goes into the general fund. So those adjustments, like I say, the payroll portion of those, it's about, I can't see that far anymore.
These were the budget adjustments that were done in 18, resulting from pay plan changes, like the union ones and other pay plan. We just wanted to show you what happened in 18.
So that was $3.75 million. So for 19, or for the 1920 budget, the changes to the major areas that we've identified is about $1.1 million, a little more than that. You can see the biggest areas are payroll, and any of you that were at the community conversations knows that, have heard me say over and over again, we're a service organization. Payroll is always going to be our #1 cost. We don't make products, we provide services. So you're always going to have services being, payroll being your number one cost.
And this is a direct reflection of all those that we've hired recently too. It's not just the
It's not just the-
payroll increases, it's the increase in staffing. I mean, we had what, 20 firefighters? that
21 new
was-
firefighters
yeah,
this past
I mean,
year. We were fortunate enough to get a SAFER grant to cover a good portion of that for
Right.
the first 2 years. But
But-
yes, there's been, that only covers, as the chief mentioned when we got it, the base amount for that firefighter. So as they gain tenure, which they will, going into this year, their salaries will go up, but the grant amount does not.
But this slide is only general fund.
What we did last year with the wages, getting them put where they need to be, made this city a great place to work. And so we've had the best of the best coming to apply.
We have,
And I think that shows. So I don't hang my head a bit for
Not at all.
and I can tell you,
raising that bar within.
the department directors and myself are very appreciative of that. It's made getting quality employees coming in. For just the first time since I've been here, we are almost at 100% staffing in the police department. I point them out because it's never happened. I've been here almost 11 years now, and there's almost always a decent amount of turnover in that department, and we have people knocking on doors left and right to come here now. And we also have neighbors who aren't happy with us because their employees are leaving. But one of the things that was mentioned, I don't believe any of you all were on the commission at the time when we switched to FRS for our fire and police officers. One of the concerns was that our officers and firefighters would leave to go to other agencies because it's made them more portable. With what we've done with these contracts, the direction on that street has switched. Those people are more portable. It goes both directions, and right now it's in our favor.
And I think that overall, the employees are happy to work here, hopefully.
I know the environment since I've been here is a 180-degree turn.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm proud of our staff, extremely proud of them.
And we're appreciative. So, now we have some of the projections going forward. You'll see revenue for FY19 was budgeted at 42.5 million. It's going up to 44.3 is the projection for next year based on all the things that we just talked about. You'll see that next column. While we showed you that the increase in revenue clearly was more than the increase in expenditures. We were using, with budget amendments and everything else this year, about $1.4 million in fund balance to balance that budget. It drops down to $69,000. It's just a preliminary projection. Obviously, our goal is to get that down to 0 or possibly start building some of that reserve back up to get us to that 10% mark. So $69,000 is not a bad place to be. Obviously, we're very preliminary right now. We'll work through the process, and hopefully by the end of July, and then when you adopt the budget in September, we'll have that number looking even better.
Can I ask a question about that?
Certainly.
What about all the capital improvements that we had budgeted last year that have yet to be accomplished? I mean, all that money is sitting there, and I get that it's part of the encumbrance of those capital funds, or?
It is. Yep, those are, going back to, what slide was that? On slide 4, it showed you the committed fund balance.
Right.
So those are projects, they're still budgeted, so the fund balance is committed, planned to be used. And on top of that, the majority of those capital projects are not in the general fund.
Well, my concern with that is because, as you just said, is that the capital dollars continue to increase in the expense of actually doing these capital projects. So, for example, the sidewalk on Eldron has taken, I mean, that started before us. So now it's 5 years later, 4 years later, and it's like the cost of it now as opposed to the cost of it when they first did that budget is astronomical. So my concern is if we're not doing these projects in a timely fashion and the money just keeps sitting there and sitting there, at what point do we start having to put back in that fund balance because it didn't activate quick enough?
And if they sit there for too long, that would happen. I'm not going to deny that at all. We are getting, a lot of our projects are started. as far as the amount of money they're going to take is committed to them. There are some, like the Eldron one, that there's been a lot of changes, a lot of conversations, so that the contract hasn't been started. Most of them, though, were within the current year or just some of the previous year on getting projects to where they're started. And once the contract is out, then we're in good shape for what that price will be.
Oh, okay, so like Tropicare, we had budgeted last year for the
The multi-use
whatever
plan.
that thing is.
That's in design right now.
Okay, and it's in design, but we have a contract for the construction?
We don't have a contract for the construction on that one yet, no.
So that may come back where it's increased in cost,
It
because
could.
I can't imagine now, it's a year later that it's not.
It's very possible, but we try to anticipate that when we budget for the project of when it's going to start and build in escalators into them. So like in our capital improvement program, when we get to that, if we're doing a project 4 years from now, we're not gonna use today's price.
Okay.
We build in escalators. Can't say we're always right, not going to say, I mean, we
Yeah,
try
nobody
to get the
knows.
best construction indicators. Yeah. Some departments and their equipment, like fire departments, we know that their fire trucks go up 5% a year. Is an industry standard. It just happens. Others, it's 3%, some it's 10, 12%.
But to me, you have that estimate, and that's why you have that 5 to that 10%. You come back and you get an adjustment to finish that project, just so that we don't put more and more projects out before the original gets totally funded and gets to be able to come off of the ground. That, I think, is what we have to be careful of.
Yep. Exactly. All right. So now this is where we want to define the commission priorities. We take these from your strategic plan as well as some that are just naturally carried over every year. Protect key services on which the public depends, the health and public safety, the infrastructure, is to develop and maintain vital infrastructure improvements, affordability, growth, and development, economic development and job creation, and we get parks and recreation, neighborhood enhancement, historic, cultural, and environmental preservation, and efficient and effective government, and maintain adequate reserves per the fund balance policy. So, before we jump off of that slide, I want to make sure that the commission still agrees with all of those, because
Well, that came out of our
came out of our strategic plan.
planning.
So
Yeah.
unless,
Absolutely.
this is what we're developing the budget on.
Yep.
When
So-
are we gonna do strategic planning this year?
Well, we're gonna have a conversation about it as part of this. Right after here, we've taken the strategic plan, which was a 3-year group of projects, and we've put them into, staff has gone through all of them. You'll see the second presentation for this puts them into the years of the 3 years. And this is where we're gonna get from you all, do you agree with those 3 years? Do you agree with how we've split them up? It was adopted as a 3-year strategic plan, but obviously all 3 can't happen. And the reason I had staff, they work so hard to put them into the years is I also want to wait until year 3 and say, all right, that's great, we're gonna do all of them in the 3rd year. That's not realistic. I'm sure the commission wouldn't appreciate that either.
That's what I was talking about, when you fall short, you have to get an adjustment, and you can't do that layer thing.
No.
Doesn't work. You shouldn't even budget your house that way, let alone a government.
So, the general fund assumptions, like I said, we're gonna, taxable value increase to 5%. We historically have had a 97% collection rate on those, which takes into account there's a lesser and lesser amount of people who don't pay, but people who pay early get up to a 4% discount. So you never get 100% of what you bill out. And if you pay it by the end of November, you get a 4% discount.
So is that what that 3% collection rate kind of really is? It's part of those that
Most
are
of it
coming
is
in
that.
early? Oh, you damn.
Yep.
Now that I didn't know.
Because if anybody, if,
It probably just
Yeah,
slipped
I
your
knew I got the
mind.
discount. I knew I got the discount, it just didn't apply to that. Whenever I paid it.
I don't think I knew that. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. I don't remember last week. Shit.
A lot of discussion happens between them and me,
I'm lucky I remember today.
and you just got started.
I know, right? What's my name?
and obviously, the goal, we will do a structurally balanced general fund budget. What that means is, the fund balance the fund will be balanced, the budget will. Our goal every year is to make sure that we don't use fund balance to pay for recurring expenditures. You know, it's a one-time funding source. It should only be used for one-time funding. Then we'll need some direction, if there's, like we've talked in previous years, if there's any capital improvement projects that you want us to know about now so that we can start planning for them that were not in last year's CIP or haven't been mentioned throughout the year. Now would be a great time. If there's projects that were in the CIP that, you guys, you know.
I didn't know we were gonna be asked this. I expected this page to come up in strategic planning.
Okay.
So I've been
And
making lists of things to go over in strategic planning. Don't know if there's a big CIP on that list, but, you know, I expect the strategic planning to come before.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, that'll be the next presentation. And then, you know, as far as the millage rate, whether you want to do the rollback rate, existing millage rate, rate increase, and anything else that you wanted to let us know before we get started on preparing this budget. As I stated, we have many, many more meetings, but the sooner you can let us know anything that you want us to know, the better. Departments, I will tell you, are already preparing. Staff had their budget kickoff, was it last week? That Finance held a meeting with everybody, with all the departments, give them the guidelines of how to prepare their budget again. You know, we do have a lot of new people. Some people, this will be their first time. Some people have done it many years, but there's always changes and improvements, things we learned going through last year's budget process, trying to ensure that the commission gets the information rather than, you know, there were some items that you all asked for during the budget process last year. We'll make sure that those are in there the first time you get it this year. I know one of the changes that we discussed last year is the first round of budget presentations we brought you all in June did not have my recommended and not recommended items. That's the way we've been doing it for several years. Commission requested that we switch that to where I actually make my recommendations before that meeting. So we will do that. That's a change for staff. It's one of the things we needed to let them know, that it's going to change the way we handle it internally before it gets to you all.
That's gonna cut down our meetings by half.
It will make probably make the July meetings go smoother.
Praise God.
You know. One of the things I do want to make sure you all are aware is, you know, like I've stated, we don't get a lot of the numbers as far as the revenue side. We don't get some good numbers until sometimes as far as late as mid-July. So a lot of the budget on the revenue side will have these assumptions. We will be making the assumption of what those numbers come in before we're told what they'll be from the state and from the property appraiser's office. So that's why the importance of this assumptions, that's what we're going to build it off of, knowing that those numbers will change, but we're going to give it our best estimates. And the good news is we always estimate conservatively. So those numbers should only go up.
Can you do me a favor? Just for public record, and we do have Mr. Emmett here. This is his first go through here, and he probably
Not
knows
really.
most. Well, I know that, but he probably knows a lot of this. I just think it's good to kind of maybe go back and kind of explain what rollback rates are, things like that.
Yep. So we'll start with, you know, we have the current rate, which was 3.407. You take that, you multiply it by the value, and that's how you get how much revenue come in. So next year, we know the value is going to change. If you leave the rate alone, you bring in more revenue. The rollback rate is designed to bring in the same amount of revenue that you brought in the previous year. So if the values go up, the rate goes down. If the values go down, the rate goes up. Those two numbers give you the amount of revenue you have. So in recession eras, the rollback rate was actually an increasing number, and in eras where the property values are going up, that makes the millage rate go down. One of the things you back out, as Commissioner Carasone mentioned, is you back out new construction. So the rollback rate doesn't take that number into account. So if you're having new construction, which we are having a lot of.
And that's because that's a delayed impact, right? I mean, like.
Yep. And the reason that the state didn't add that into the rollback rate is typically if you're having new construction, you're having new demands on services. So when the rollback rate was discussed at the state level, was the downside to it is, well, if you bring in the same amount of revenue every year, how are you going to pay for growth? You know, if we have 20,000 new people come into the city, you're not going to have the same amount of any service, fire, police, parks, administrative, planning. So they allowed for the rollback rate to not take into account new construction, but it's designed to bring in the same amount of revenue that you would have brought in the previous year. And then, you know, the commission has the ability to raise the millage rate from year to year within certain parameters. In that rollback rate calculation, you start off where you are, you have the rollback rate, you can increase it a certain amount just based on the majority of commission, and that number changes based on what the rollback rate is. So I can't tell you that based on 3.407 when you need a supermajority, meaning in our case 4 out of the 5 to vote for it, and you can go. For us, that would be to go up. I think last year's supermajority number was somewhere around 7 mils, which was almost double where we are, and it's been somewhere around 7 lately. I can tell you now, if you all tried to raise the millage rate to 7, I'm not sure who would go first, me or all of you. But,
If we made it up at the
and then there's.
I was just gonna wait for him to finish.
Still with them.
For the record, just to announce that Vice Mayor has joined us.
And the maximum millage rate you can go to is 10. So obviously at 3.407, we're nowhere near either of those numbers. But that process just has, like I say, it has different levels. You can go up a little bit just on a 3-2 vote. On a supermajority vote, you can go, I believe it was somewhere 7 point something mils. And then if you all unanimously voted, we could go to 10. In emergency, you know, hopefully we're never here. In an emergency situation, you can have a vote or referendum to go higher than 10, but you can only do it for a short period of time. I don't think we'll be in that situation anytime soon.
Isn't that increasing 10?
Now, 10 is the max,
So the millage rate can never be more than 10%.
not without an election. The general public could vote to have it higher than that.
Was you couldn't raise it more than 10, that it actually could go over 10, but you couldn't raise it more than 10 increments.
You know, it's a max of 10.
Okay, thank you.
And hopefully that's just a hypothetical conversation we never have here. Considering where we are now, I don't think any of us here will ever see it go anywhere near that. We're a pretty fiscally conservative community. I don't see that being an issue here, but it is information. And with that, we'll open it up to discussion.
I want to bring up again the strategic planning timing with this, because we're supposed to be getting reports from our advisory boards this is their only chance to let us know what they might be recommending occur during the year, so that we could get into budget if, they do have something they're wanting to recommend. So again, I'll ask, when are we going to have strategic planning so we can talk ideas and talk over the advisory board things too?
But we can talk about that right now. I can bring Jason up, who's going to lead the conversation of our strategic plan summary right now. You can do that. I think you all have the large versions of this.
I didn't bring it to the table.
You have another one made up for
Do you want this small one just so you have something to look at?
Oh, it's up there.
Okay.
Thank you. That goes to Mr. Lear.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Jason Yarborough, Assistant City Manager. In your strategic plan for 2018 to 2021, you have 8 goals and then various objectives underneath those goals. Health and public safety, public parks and recreation infrastructure, economic development and job creation, historical, cultural, and environmental preservation, affordable growth and development, neighborhood enhancement, efficient and effective government. And what staff has done is taken the CIP projects that are in the current CIP, taken the non-CIP projects as well as some other operational actions that are budgeted for, and then tied it back. So the goal is, how are we going to implement this strategic plan? So what we've done is taken the goals and then the objectives and created columns. The first one, let's take that one just as an example. Health and public safety. We have the goals and the objectives listed, the goals at the top, and then the objectives are listed underneath. What departments are working on that. And then we have 4 columns, which is the current fiscal year, which is in progress or completed. And then we have fiscal year 2020, 2021. And then for kind of a catch-all of past that. So for the immediate 3 years are those middle 3 columns. I don't know how y'all want to do this. We can go over page by page, but I know that y'all kind of, anyway, do y'all have any specific questions? We're going to be working on this. We're going to, throughout the budget process. So, but anyway, yes, ma'am.
My first question is, when we were in strategic planning last year, I know we extended the planning out, but I thought it was 18, 19, because we were behind.
We were like 6 months to 9 months behind.
Yeah, we were behind, so that's why we extended it. I didn't really realize that it was taking in 2021.
I have to agree. I thought it was supposed to be a year and a half to complete those.
Yes.
And that's why this year when we did our strategic plan, it would either support these and add a few or just continue, or, you know what I mean? I didn't think it was a 3-year plan.
No, I thought it was 18, 19, 20, and so I'm surprised looking at 21.
It was the 18 to 19, 19 to 20. Right.
And I honestly thought that we're supposed to be having a strategic planning session now for 1920's fiscal year.
No, it would be, yes, sorry, you're right, 1920s. But that was,
part of the conversation we are having
yeah,
right
yeah.
now. But, and when we,
I thought we were having a new strategic planning session.
okay, I did not think that we're having another session, because we, again, the summary was 18 to 21. This is the document that we
I don't
adopted.
remember
20.
going to 21.
Yeah, but see, 18, 19, 20 is 3 years, and we did it for the year and a half so that it would be.
Right, spot on for this year. That's how I understood it as well. But we would then get ready for the 19 to 20 plan sometime between now and August. And I do think that the previous year we talked about it being in December. But then that was kind of dumb now that I think about it,
So we
because
just
December's
finished,
never a good time.
we finished it, it was, I think, June or July when we adopted it.
Right. Right.
Like I said, we drafted this based on the document that we adopted, which was 18 to 21. So if I mean, if we want to do something different, we certainly can, but.
So when do you believe our next strategic planning meeting should be?
December,
December of what year?
this year.
19.
Wow.
So then that would be the 6 months of 19 to 20, then
So we
20 to
have-
21, and 22 to 20. Where the hell am I? 19 to 20.
21/22,
Yes.
and that to me,
And our budget is 2021.
Yeah, that's how.
So
Yeah, it's
like, we're right
2020.
now in the fiscal year 2019 budget,
It's 19.
and it's 18-19.
Right.
So we're
Okay, so-
adopting the 2020, we're just starting the 2020 budget, which starts in 19.
At the risk
Right.
of sounding ignorant, when your column says fiscal year 19, is it 18-19?
Yes.
Okay, so it's really fiscal year 18-19, so then it's 19-20.
And then 2021.
Okay. I was looking at it as fiscal year
Back the other way.
19-20, 2021.
I was looking at the beginning of it
Yeah,
also.
okay. So I'm glad I risked being ignorant because it
No.
answered a question
That's a
for
good
all
question.
of us.
I apologize, I thought I'd said that the first column is our current fiscal year, but I may have not have said
You
that.
may have, but I was still in
Got it.
1920.
Projection as opposed to
Correct.
backward.
Got it.
952, so.
Got
But it's still 3 years. So we're in this first year,
Mhm.
and then there's the second year,
the upcoming fiscal year.
and then that third 2021. And again, I thought we were doing the 6 months from 17 to 18, and then 18, 19. I thought it was a year and a half.
Right, and then we
Where-
went out a
so
year and a
we're
half.
behind.
Exactly.
Right, so just kind of a heads up that now that kind of shifts everything and explains why it's taken so damn long to do anything. So, other than it being government. But, so now we need to figure out, okay, so if we do something in December, we don't want to change what's happening the last 6 months of 19 to 20 or what's happening in 20 to 21.
No, we would,
We have to
my thoughts,
continue
what we're
the
doing
3
is in
years.
December, you do an update to the strategic plan, because it's a, a 3-year plan. And we look at it in December for the upcoming 2021 budget process.
Why aren't we looking at 1920?
Yeah.
Why aren't we having a meeting to look at that budget?
Because that's what we're
That's
doing
what we're
now.
doing right now.
It's the
Because
1920.
when this was adopted, in, I think it was
I've only
June.
been through this one, and then there was a halftime,
Mm-hmm.
but we had a strategic planning day. We
Yes.
went in and we talked.
Mhm.
That's what I was expecting again this year. Wasn't expecting to come to this meeting, which I don't even really remember last year doing this.
We didn't, because
But-
last year when we did this,
Well,
we,
no wonder I don't remember.
last year, we did our strategic planning in April. We started it in April. So that's why we didn't start it all, and we adopted it in June or July, I believe it was. And the plan was to get this on a December timeframe, so we'd do the strategic planning before we got to this point, but you had just done it. That's why you wouldn't do it again in December. That was the thought process.
But again, going back to the advisory boards, they are supposed to be producing their yearly report to us in the spring, so that the timing is at strategic planning for us. To me, it's vitally important that we sit down once a year as a group and we discuss the strategic planning. Whether we've got this 3-year plan or not, because there are things that change and adjust, and you need to look at it and listen to your constituents that are sitting on the boards. I don't see how we can ignore strategic planning for 1920.
And nobody's asking to ignore it. What we're saying is you wouldn't bring in a consultant to do a new 3-year strategic plan.
I'm not saying you have to bring a consultant in, but I think there needs to be a similar meeting as to what we had.
We did strategic planning every year. Since when did it go from every year to every 3 years? I don't understand.
Right.
Because my thoughts on that were, is when we adopted it again, like I said, you wouldn't do it and then do it again 5 months later, when this is the first budget that we're adopting
So-
and going through that process,
Yeah, 'cause
based on the last time you did
You could
one.
be shoveling, you know what, against the tide. If you're doing that, you're just piling and never getting anything done. So I get that.
Here's, because we had our strategic planning shortly after I got elected. I mean, I got elected in November of 16,
Mhm.
and within a month, Mr. Lyle's calling, okay, we're gonna talk strategic planning. Then we had our strategic planning session, which was December, January, if I remember correctly, and then it took like 9 months to get anything done. It was like, whatever happened to it? So then we adopted that one, and then shortly after that, the lady came in a few months later, and we did another strategic plan, and we talked about, because we missed a year or so.
Was late, yeah.
Because it was so late in getting that 16 strategic plan finished on time, We did another one, and we were talking about having that last for a year and a half, which would bring us to 1920. So now we have to do a strategic plan, not for 1920, but for when we start 2021, which would make sense doing it in December. So that way then by the time it's adopted, we're ready for 2021's budget.
And that's what I thought I just said,
Okay,
why we're
well,
going to do it in
we're talking
December.
two different languages, so I
Okay.
just had to make sure I heard what you were saying.
Yep.
Okay.
See, I think there needs to be strategic planning for this budget that we're talking about, 1920.
Well, that's what he's saying, that's what we did last December.
But we did not have a report from our advisory boards and such. There are ideas that we might want to say, hey, you know, 40,000 needs to go here for whatever, whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to be huge CIP projects, but the strategic planning is where we talk about where we want to go for the year.
And those reports are due to you, I believe the advisory boards have to have them to you by April. And you've had some of them, there's some more scheduled coming up. Some of them were just, you know, they have the option to either send you a report or do a presentation. The majority of them that want to do reports have sent you the reports. There's, I believe, another presentation scheduled, upcoming meeting. I don't have that schedule in front of me, but you know, those will be coming to you very shortly. If you'd like to discuss all of the advisory boards and their reports as one, we can schedule a meeting for that.
Well, if they have any recommendations, I know the Tree and Beautification has talked about that 41 project for landscaping and stuff. They've been talking about that for 2 years. I sat in those meetings when I was a candidate the first time. There's the littering signs that another group brought up. I think it might have even been the same group that brought up. Well, if we don't discuss it and put it in the budget, I mean, we're having an agenda item come up here and we're having to adjust the budget. So if we yearly look at these things and get them put in the budget, you're not making the adjustments and taking away your fund balance because it's being planned. To me, it's a better way of doing a budget. Just have everything, you know, throw all the eggs on the table.
I apologize. If you get the advisory board reports in spring, you can still incorporate it as part of the budget, not necessarily part of the immediate strategic plan. Doesn't that achieve your goal?
It would, but I'm not hearing that we're gonna have a strategic planning until December.
Right,
So,
but you can still incorporate the ideas from the advisory boards into the budget, even if it's not necessarily
In the
immediate
strategic, right.
incorporated into the strategic plan, isn't it?
yeah,
Doesn't that achieve your goal?
You can make adjustments all the way through, correct?
Yes, all the way
Into the
until
budget,
the
all the
budget's
way
adopted
through.
in September.
But
Sounds like you're
instead
gonna
of,
get where you wanna go.
eventually,
It sounds like we're going that way. Okay.
but
Okay.
to me, it's just, I don't know, assign a meeting that we can discuss that in. And if it's strategic planning you're calling it, or if it's budget that you're calling it, but we can talk about what we might want to add to this year's budget so that it's in the budget and it's not hodgepodged around. I mean, we have as a commission thrown out multiple things from the dais and adjusted the budget. And to me, it's better to know what you're doing, to lay that budget out, than to have the discussions hodgepodging around throughout the year
Then how about we
looking
get
for
you,
money.
we'll schedule a commission meeting in the month of April, because all your advisory board reports are supposed to be to you by then. We can go over all of the reports. If there's anything from your advisory boards that you'd like to incorporate into the budget, we'll have them all by then, and you all, because again, as one of the things that was discussed yesterday, I'm not going to put things in the budget. The advisory boards report to you all. They don't report to me. And I don't put anything in the budget from the advisory boards unless you as a group tell me to. So we'll schedule a meeting in April to where we can go over all of the reports, because, you know,
It's
there's-
important because you're losing people off of advisory boards because they're not being effective. They feel as though they're not effective. That they've gotten these ideas from years ago and we're not moving on them.
Okay.
And I'm telling them, well, has it come up in strategic planning? We have to, you know, talk about this, decide whether it's something we want to move on, put the money with it. That's the way you do budgeting and planning. And so I'm giving these excuses, but we need to do it.
Okay. We'll schedule a meeting in April to go over all of the advisory boards.
Well, please
and-
make sure it's okay with the rest of my commissioners. I know I just.
No, I
voiced it.
agree. I'm just, I'm throwing that out there as an idea, and I don't mean it to come across as it appeared yesterday. That I'm taking the direction from just one of you. I'm giving the idea of how we can, the solution to what we're talking about, for you all to decide as a group, if that's good for you.
Is it a commission meeting or like a workshop?
Well, we currently have a workshop on April 10th to go over the citywide fees. We can add it to that at the same time. That's typically not a long meeting. And we can add it to that workshop, again, if the group is. I want to make sure that everybody understands I am looking for the direction from the group of that. It's April 10th. It should already be on your calendar because it was on the adopted schedule.
Oh, yeah, you gotta determine it, right? Right, probably a good idea.
Well, and I fully agree with
And I
that
don't
too,
even know if
because it gives value back to the boards once they're listened to and the projects are going forward, rather than just saying, hold on, hold on, hold on. No. I mean, I agree with that, absolutely.
I am good for the 10th.
Great idea.
I'm
We'll add
open.
that to the 10th.
Okay, so.
Yeah, you were
I don't-
scheduled for
yeah,
the
I
workshop
don't-
anyways.
I mean, I know, but
I
I don't
know.
Yeah,
know
it
what's
was the
gonna
lead.
happen in April, so,
Such is true.
yeah.
Move on, Mayor, can I ask a question? In our last strategic planning session, if I remember correctly, we spent a good, I don't know, maybe 3, maybe 4 hours of our strategic planning's consultants' time getting an update of everything that was in the budget and in the CIP. And we all, if my memory serves me right, recognized that that wasted a lot of the consultants' time, but the information was invaluable. And if I remember, we also gave direction or requested an update, I think it was every 6 months, to have a sit-down to go over where are we in this project? What's going on with that project? So that way then we're more informed and can refresh our memory, and also to say, we can't do this because we have this and this going on.
Wasn't that the monthly reports, the whole point of the monthly?
No, it was outside of the monthly
Oh.
reports. It
I
was,
don't remember
I
this, so.
remember that outside of the monthly
I think
reports.
we talked about a 6-month update or
Yeah,
something
where
like
we're gonna
that.
sit down
But
and-
then the monthly reports did come in after that, so that's how I've been viewing the monthly reports. So is there anything on top of the monthly report that would be
I think that it was
necessary?
more of a concise, go down the list, because the monthly reports don't do that.
So,
The monthly reports, when I view them, I say, oh, cool, the pool's moving along as planned, that's great, we're moving this and this is what's going on. Sometimes the monthly reports won't have that strategic planning update in it, it's just giving what that department did for the month. It's not that in-depth 3-hour conversation we had.
no, so just so I'm clear, are you looking for a report? Is strategic planning and the CIP projects mostly are the same thing. Not 100%, but because we have this document that we're giving you right now, it breaks the CIP into years. We also have the entire CIP that if you're looking for, all right, here's the 100 projects we have in the current CIP. Where are all of them? If that the kind of update you're looking at, just
Well, that's what we did at the CIP, I mean, at
At
the
the-
strategic planning.
and that's
Remember
what-
when you were doing that, and the lady sitting over there like, oh, la, 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 what are we doing?
and that's what I'm trying to, what exactly are you looking for us to report on so that I'm
I'd like
clear
to
on
have
that,
an update
on the CIP?
on the CIP projects, because I don't know what's going on with water control structure, whatever. You know, as far as I know, it's either in progress, or it's not started, or it's done. I don't know.
That'd be, honestly, we have monthly
that's not
staff
in the
meetings to
monthly
go over
reports.
this. So we can get that to you very easy if that's what you're looking for, but again, that's what one of you is looking for.
So that in the director's meeting reports?
A lot of it is.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Now, if a project's not started at all, it's probably
That's
not
what
in
we
there.
don't know.
No.
That's what we don't know.
Yep. So,
If we're expecting this project that we budgeted in fiscal year 18, and it still isn't started, we don't know that
Correct.
until somebody says, hey, what's going on with this? Or during strategic planning, well, we already budgeted this. Yeah, well, it hasn't started. Well, we don't know that.
Well, on that report, the directors, or that calendar thing, there are some plans, listed, and then
Yes,
it's
some.
NA or whatever, it's to be determined, or, whatever it states, knowing, so I know it hasn't started.
But that's
So-
for commission directives, where I'm seeing the NAs on the director's report. Your director's meeting reports where I see the NA or to be determined, but that's not CIP projects. There's totally different things. One's commission directives from the dais when we're up there talking, and the other one is where we are in the CIP projects.
Yeah, well, I think we're crossing a little different areas here. The director's reports, some of them do have their CIP projects, whether they're listed or not. But you're right, the ones that probably are not started may not be in there. We can get you a list, if that's what the commission as a body would like to see, of here's all the CIP projects and their current status.
Well, that goes back to that 6-month thing that we talked about in planning. So if it's just a 6-month report, just, the list of what we've got to let us know whether it started or that every 6 months.
Because we're coming into budget, and I'm looking at some of these things that are on here, and I'm like, we already talked about this, and why isn't this started, or where are, and I was like, where's our report to say where
Okay.
we are in the project?
Yeah, I think that little 6 month, I don't want that another monthly report,
No, but it's because CIP projects are big.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. It's only a 6-month CIP
Right,
report,
but if-
nothing else.
So for example, if we have a water control, and sorry, Mr. Lee, I'm picking on that one, because that is a large project that has many steps in it. If we knew it's in planning, it's in design, it's out to bid,
Yeah, that's
and then
Every 6 months.
I think it would be very valuable, especially at budget time.
Okay. If that's something that, you all as a group want, we can certainly give that to you, and that honestly would not be a lot of work, because we have monthly meetings to go over these anyway, internal meetings.
Well, it's only 6 months update on the CIPs too. It helps us not only with budgeting, but we have citizens that ask us questions. Well, where are you with infrastructure? Why this or that? And if we do have a project that is in design or it's at engineering or something, it's an answer for them.
Okay.
So it is
Yeah,
information.
and that way then we're not
for
sending you
us.
15 emails
You
going,
should
hey,
send-
I don't know. I sent you 20.
I do want to say I absolutely love the emails and follow-ups from Carrie, and I believe, Jason, you're in on them too. Those directives that we give and the projects, love them. I mean, they come in 25 at a time. That's fine, they're great.
Yeah, and I get to
Love 'em.
cross them off my list.
Love 'em.
Unfortunately, that list doesn't seem to be dwindling. It's hovering right around 115. Even if we cross 20 off, 20 come back on. But
Well, our goal needs to shrink that, it really
it
does.
is our goal to shrink. So,
Go ahead and move forward. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying, let's move forward.
One of the things that I did want to discuss on the plan for next year is, let's see, social services. Social services really, in my opinion, would do better under the NDS department, because there seems to be a whole lot of communication about, no, I don't, no, I'm not even paying attention to that, no. I think all this is still in process, it needs to be continued, and we need to find out where we are on them.
okay.
That's all I gotta say about this. So,
About what I had
Yeah.
too.
That's
I
what
was,
I said when I read this.
yeah.
so that's why I'm concentrating on, from this point forward. The social services going under NDS, because the homeless and the affordable housing is gonna be very, very prominent, in the legislative, both state and federal in this next year, and possibly falling into the year 2021. And with building and planning and social services, I think it goes hand in hand. And I think that they could complement each other, so I'm just
Pardon me.
saying that, I'm just
Sorry.
saying that,
It was a donut.
to think about that one. The other is, as far as capital projects, something I had thought of last night when we were having the conversation, when the school board was here last night. We haven't really looked at the Performing Arts Center, which we are a partner with. And we helped with the building of, and it might be time to look at the upgrading of that Performing Arts Center or updating. And are we responsible, or do we have to kind of help contribute to that? Especially with their hardening going in, with the ticket sales and so on and so forth. I think it'll also open up some communication about the pool if we talk about how we're willing to help with the art center, because we are a partner on that. And we understand there's things that are needed there. How do we talk about that, the need for the city to work as a partner on that, as well as the need for the school board to work on with us as a partner on the pool? So kind of a give and take type deal, which I hope we get more than we have to give, but just kind of an idea. The other is the East End substation, which I know it's in here somewhere.
Substation, that's our
Yeah,
police.
we talked about how the East End really needed access to city services, kind of another Morgan Center, and we had talked about that not only one year, but the second year as well.
We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, so I don't know where that is in here, because it's not like we all have had so much time to really have to look at all this. But, you know, I think that that's something that really needs to be prioritized, because we have seen how things take 2-3 years. And maybe we need to start at least getting those contracts, that engineering, that design, you know, make sure that we can find the property and so on and so forth. I think it was maybe it was in, you know, like the 3rd year projection. I'm not sure. Where was it? Did you say?
There's nothing there, I put it on 2.1 because of Parks and Rec, because we talked about the Morgan Center, a community center, a substation.
yeah.
We were like lumping it all together,
Yes.
so that's why we stuck
It was like a
in the window.
mixed-use facility that would be in conjunction with a, you know, a community center and the city complex services. So I don't know where that is, or,
Well, it says here, it's a Parks and Rec east of Toledo Glade, but it doesn't address the substation / city government stuff that we had talked about.
so that would
And
probably
I
be
thought it was kind
it.
of like a combination.
And where do
You have a
where do you
project,
see that?
That's where it's talking.
Oh,
about
number
the
2,
water.
number 2. I see.
Water phase.
Yeah. But as you see, like, much of this doesn't even start until 2021, and that, you know, that's a little concerning. And then they've already, to begin planning Langless, that has nothing to do, none of that, we didn't say put this facility in Langless. We said East End. We've never had the conversation about where or what or how. So, you know, we need to discuss that. Langless is not even, it wasn't even on our
Where is that?
3-year 2.1.
No, Langless.
It's way out
It's
past
way out
Yorkshire.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
recognize the name.
You don't know Langless? Yes, you do.
Well, not by
You lied to
name,
me.
probably by sight.
You know where Langless is. But anyways, so that's one of my concerns, is that, you know, we are just putting some assumption in there that that's where it's gonna go, and that's not where, I mean, we haven't had that discussion. And if it's something that's gonna take 5 to 10 years, maybe. it's gonna take 3 years, I don't know if that's the appropriate place to put it, so.
Just so I'm clear on what the whole group wants, is at
I'm
the
gonna
east
go
end.
back around.
Yep, on the east end, because we're talking about it under parks, but we also threw in there government services.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure
Well,
that
it's
it's
like
a
all,
combination.
that's why I
Yeah.
remember it too, but I just wanna make sure that we're all clear on what the group as a whole is looking to go out there, because they're, one, you know, I don't wanna put a park and think, well, no, we plan to have city government out there as well, or, and also, you know, another impact on that is funding sources. If we put a building department, you know, for permits and all those other things out there, that opens us up to different funding sources than putting just a park or a police station even. So
I'm not sure exactly from my perspective how this is going to look. Because not only if we're gonna put government services out there, we have to have the staffing, we have to have the building, we have to have the infrastructure, the technologies, all of that kind of stuff, and make sure everybody's talking with the, you know, east end is talking to central, and then the west end, because I see at some point we're having something at the west end too. So west, central, and then east, we have to make sure that it's all talking to each other and that we have the staffing for it and stuff. So this is like a much grander conversation that I think might be part of the Activity Center 6 master plan. I don't know.
See, I don't see it as part of the 6 master plan, because I think the master plan for 6 is going to be a discussion about economic development versus residential zoning, so on and so forth. This is a city service substation with a community center. And it's really about how long is it gonna take to accomplish. And if it's going to take 15 years, then yes, you're gonna have to look at east, west, central. If it's gonna take 3 to 5, then you better stick with central, being the Toledo Blade and, I don't know, Panacea kind of area, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Or even Atwater, exactly,
I would say
right,
Atwater
right.
area.
Right, so, you know, you see what my point is? Because if we're gonna, that very, very east end is not going to be built up without the infrastructure for 10 to 15 years. And I can't see us putting a service center, a substation, or a community center there.
5 miles from
Right,
anything.
exactly.
Correct.
So, but we need to have that discussion. We can't just assume Langless is the park in the area unless this is that additional park, which we said that it was like 5 to 10 years down the road. So,
Actually, I like the idea of the Panacea Plantation area off of the 75
It's right there.
yeah.
right now.
This is why I just kind of
Wanted to go through I have 5 points that I wanted to go through, and then I'd go back around so everybody had time to think about them.
But in my mind, the community park, the Morgan Center out east, is higher priority than the substation. To me, that park area, the citizens have been screaming
Yes,
for
for a Morgan Center out there.
Center type area out east. That to me is the top-notch priority.
But
The
understand-
substation- The substation can be near there.
No, it should be part of the campus because of
That's what
the ability to get more financing if you combine it.
I understand, that's what I'm saying. So if you have this park-like setting there as the top priority with it in the master plan to have the substation at some point built out there.
I have it the reverse.
No, it's not the priority. Citizens are gonna travel
I
5 to 10
understand
miles.
that, but it's really not, that's not the
right.
point.
Where would it sit under if it's multiple, if it's a complex? Exactly, a government use complex, and you might have a few buildings around each other. Where would it fall under here?
You could fall under multiple, I mean, you've
Yeah.
already got that with
You
the
got
fire,
the
police.
Public safety area, it could go in a
Yeah.
bunch of places, but I believe the
The only
one
place I
towards the
saw
end.
anything closely remotely was the parks area.
And like I said, the whole Langless build out,
And if you're gonna
we
put it
had
under-
killed that for like, I don't know, 5 years. I mean, we killed it.
moved it out.
Yeah, I think we moved it out. We didn't necessarily kill it, but we moved it way out there. So to see it in here within the 3-year was like, what is that? So I think we need to really make sure we figure out what we're doing about that, Because like I said, if we don't have a conversation on that and how long it's gonna take to do that, we can't really make that determination, and we need to make that determination in order to figure out where. So, like I said, I'm gonna come back around for some conversation. Dallas White, the daycare center and the shift and the buildings and all of that, we never really got a clarification as to what we're going to do with that campus. And are we going to create, new buildings and facilities for the arts center and them to use and rent? And, it's on our 18-19 plan to start that complex master plan. So what are we doing with that? Because I know that the YMCA is chomping at the bit to get into a new building. The art center, they've been in the
We gave them direction to look at doing different things in that area, and that was.
I thought so,
we were
too.
coming back. So I think this is one of those that we need
An update.
Because I know we squashed doing a master plan for Dallas White because it wasn't even in our strategic plan. I remember that distinctly.
It's here now.
Exactly.
So this is where I'm saying, where the heck did these things come from? Okay.
They're all, what's in here, is staff suggestions to help implement your strategic plan.
So it's staff suggestions.
Well,
They-
it's a combination of what's currently in your
currently in
CIP, what's non-CIP projects, as
You
well
have a
as
strategic plan,
things they may be budgeting or asking for.
these are ideas. This, I really want to make sure you're not under the belief that any of this, obviously the projects that are already in the CIP are adopted.
See, it says strategic plan summary, so I thought it was things
Yeah.
that we had talked about, not
No, it
realizing
was,
that it
you
was.
adopted a strategic plan.
Correct,
Our ways to make that happen, we bring to you all.
correct.
This is how staff envisions implementing your strategic plan. If you've got,
But Dallas White wasn't in our strategic plan at all. It was not
But
in
it's
our
certainly a
strategic plan.
conversation
but
Yeah, but it was a
Yeah.
strong.
we've had
but it was
many
a strong
conversations about, and so.
We definitely made it sound like a strategic plan in our conversation.
And the plan prior to, we just kind of pushed it out.
It was always in our capital improvement plan,
And
it
at
was
the end of
always
the day,
part of the strategic plan.
we're rapidly approaching a
Yeah.
point where we need to know what you want to
Yeah,
do with
we
Dallas
have to
White,
do
because
something with that. Yeah.
the new aquatic facility is almost
Yep,
done. I
yeah.
don't want to sit here and say, because I know that I'll get 5 million emails, or actually you all will, that the city manager said and didn't. I'm not saying we're going to close or what we're going to do, but
We have
the
to figure it
plan
out.
was, we're going to build the new aquatic facility and figure out what to do with Dallas White.
Well, actually, we stated. We put in, I think it was 100,000 to close it, because it's no longer gonna be funded by the county. And actually, those inspections that are being done, they will condemn it when that new one opens.
Well, we actually did not get a consensus on that. We never did.
We
So we got a consensus to make sure the money was put in there, because we had to have that conversation about what to do with the park as a whole. So that's why the money's in there.
Not the park, the pool is what we were
But
discussing.
it was in there because we had to have the bigger conversation about the whole facility area. And then it was there in case so that it was still an option. So we never, I just want to be clear, we didn't actually say as a majority of the board that we were closing the park or the pool. We just said, keep that money on the side.
And it was carried over to this past one, because there was a majority, I believe, that said we were gonna shut it down when the new one opened, and that was part of the reasoning for putting a new pool in, because that other one was just
Life supported thing.
money.
Okay.
But it got put back on the table and put in with the park discussion for the whole thing. And so it was never fully discussed.
So anyways, the Dallas White area really needs to be considered as a priority, because again, we get into that, it takes forever to get anything accomplished. I guess we do need an update on what it is that we gave direction on in the first place. Let's see, and I already talked about that. And, internet, fiber, running internet and fiber, to areas that do not have that option right now. We've got to put money aside, be it sales tax, be it, fund balance, overage of millage. I don't know how we're gonna do it. You're the math man, you know this. But my point is we have to work with people like Comcast and those who are allowing for fiber optics to come into different areas to say, look, we will support your infrastructure by giving you X amount of dollars to run these fiber optic lines to, say, the estates or to even parts of Cranberry that don't have it. And then in return, you know, you have customers. And I guess that would be part of economic development, but you know, I think there's going to be a financial aspect to it, whether it be impact fees, you know, a qualified percentage of the impact fees go towards the expansion of internet and high-speed internet. But we have to do something because there are people screaming on a daily basis they cannot connect to the internet. And well, you know, you're in an area that stinks too. So my point is that we have to fund we have to create a mechanism that will incentivize some of these high-speed internet providers to come in and actually start that process.
And I wouldn't limit it to Comcast. I would
No,
look at
I just
AT&T,
meant as an example,
Verizon, you
yeah.
know, there's a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be redoing Tropicana and not widening the road, but repaving the road and putting in sidewalks. And I had a conversation with city manager that when we have that hole dug, to contact these providers, whoever it is, and say, we've got the hole dug, come and put down the infrastructure. So I don't know if anything has progressed in that area, if you need consensus from the board to pursue this.
I think we gave consensus for that when we talked about in the first place.
But we never talked about having the hole dug and then coming in and laying the line.
I thought we did.
So, then also at the Sarasota County School Board meeting, when we had that joint meeting with the government agencies, I mentioned how much dead space we have at the school board meeting, and the school board went, no, there wasn't, no, there isn't. There.
I wasn't at that meeting.
I know,
Yeah.
so dead space meaning you can't connect, and there's a requirement in school.
Oh, I got you. Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
requirement in school that you have to have, online classes.
Yes.
To be able to graduate high school now. And so I would like to see if there's some kind of collaboration with the school board to help,
There's some grant fundings and
entice
stuff, right?
these agencies, these technology agencies, the Comcast and Frontiers of the world, to work with us when we're doing our infrastructure to help with the schools. The schools, I think, have a very good leg to help and give a little bit more pressure, like you were saying. But this is just something else that we can put in our toolboxes. It's not just us saying, hey, people need internet, hey, businesses out there need internet. Now you got the school board saying, hey, we have a requirement for graduation and they can't do it.
Well, that.
In colleges. I mean, we have
Exactly.
several colleges around that have the mixed campus. You can go to campus one day and then you do the internet the next day. Some of the science classes usually have a lab in-house and then the actual class part out on the internet. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways we can look at it, but if you speak to many of these representatives that provide high-speed internet, they're all gonna tell you the same thing. It is the amount of money that we would have to put in infrastructure will never be recouped with the amount of people who would be providing service. So,
What we can't get them to tell us is what that number is.
because most of
We've
them
been
don't
asking
know.
for almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
Which is also why I think, you know, looking at the collaboration between wireless and these landline structures, because like anything else, it's the last mile of service that is the most costly. You know, it's getting it from that main hub, over into these subdivisions, and that's where some of these wireless
So then there's another side to this, is that if we can't get anyone to invest in what it is that we are looking to do to help advance our city and our residents, how do we become our own fiber optic utility
Can't.
type?
Can't.
Well, I think you
In the
can't.
state of Florida.
Not in the state of Florida, you can't.
That's right, that's right.
But can
You
we
can't.
help
Okay.
them? Okay, if we can't do it ourselves and become our own technology, City of Northport's internet provider, can we help them with defraying the costs?
Well, that's.
Well, that's
what
exactly
I
what
just
she's
said.
saying.
Well, we can't get an answer on that.
Answer.
From the
For-
government?
No, it's not a government question.
From the
It's
companies.
a Comcast,
No,
it's
I'm
a,
asking does the government prevent us from helping
no, because
that?
it's, we can consider it, a public need, and which there's no argument that
Yeah,
there is.
absolutely.
We can assist with them doing it, we just can't do it ourselves.
Okay, that
And
makes
the
sense.
frustration I can tell you from my office is the inability to get the answer of, I get, just like you meant, that last mile, whatever the reason is why they're not putting it out in the, I'm just gonna use the estates as the example, I know there's more areas, but that's the one that everybody is familiar with and understands,
Right.
because there's few customers in a large area.
Yeah.
And the business model is, you need this many customers per mile of line that you run. What's that shortfall? I literally asked it that simple of a question is, so your business model and you come up X number of dollars short. What is that number? Because I can't bring to you all and say I need to put in $100,000, $1 million, whatever that number is into a budget and find out if you all are in agreement with it. I mean, I know in having conversations, we've had them here, I've had them with you individually, because you've all been contacted that it's a problem. I feel pretty confident we would be willing to do something. I don't know what that is, because I can't bring you the information that they won't give me in order to make this happen. I can tell you we will be following up again for the, I can't even tell you how many times we've reached out to providers. Mayor Hanks and I actually met with one out in the middle of nowhere.
Technologies.
Okay,
Yep, we went
yeah,
out there
'cause I know
and
I was on the planning board. when
Thought we
they
were going to
came
go down a
through
path
Sarasota.
and then it's not worth it for us.
I've also talked to.
Started off very positive.
It did.
I
And then,
talked to James Buchanan's office about it. They had great length. I had a meeting with them, and he was unaware of it in this area. Just like the school board was.
Well, they
So,
said they even had it fixed.
well, the school board, yeah,
Remember?
they, not only were they
Yeah.
not aware of it, their statement was, well, everybody has internet.
everybody-
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we took care of that, it's all fixed
And I
now.
think everybody from
Yeah.
our contingent about fell out of our chair.
It's not.
And we picked
It's
ourselves
not.
back up.
No, it's not.
No, we have a whole
So
area.
he's aware now, and maybe through his office, might be able to help us with this.
His office might be able to reach out. and get a
So,
look.
because there are federal funds to
Correct.
expand internet infrastructure,
Yes.
and so we need to find out what those federal funds are, because that wouldn't necessarily be James, but maybe his dad, we can try, would help us to find those funds and see how we can, or at least,
Yeah, but James
he
has
would
the
have
personal
the,
number.
but Vern would have the connections to those
But
CEOs.
James has the connection to the personal number,
But if you go to these guys and say, we're going to the legislators to talk about the financing, our school is showing that there's, a definite need, and when we get, all these cookies in our basket, we're gonna find out who's gonna work with us, and put it out to, to
And
them.
maybe you
Make them get a
great
little
point. You make a great point.
Commissioner, because we could find the data on how many people do not have high-speed internet access, because I can tell you that the majority of people out in not just the Estates area, but everything south, have internet, don't get me wrong, but it's not high speed.
functional.
And it's not functional.
There's a
So we as a city could go out and get that data collected to turn around and say, these are your probable customers. This is your probable estimated profit margin. And this is the infrastructure cost, and this is what we're willing to do to help you.
Exactly.
And we make the proposal, don't rely on
Go
them,
ahead,
we
yeah.
come in.
Yep. So you gonna step up, or we're gonna go to the next
Yeah,
guy?
that's a great point.
The next step we could do is not just focus, and I know you've said it, not just focus on the estates area, but find out where are those classified dead zones where there's nothing available throughout the entire city. Find out those areas that have kind of internet access, where it's available, but it's not functional.
How do you define non-functional?
They have upload and download speeds.
We have old Verizon cable
DSL.
lines. It's DSL,
DSL.
and that's not, and it runs. It was the original lines run back in 97, 98.
But it seems so fast when they went through it.
And back
DSL.
then, that
You
was
won't
like,
find it.
wow, it's not
That's the best
dial-up.
part.
You're
Well, it's
absolutely
not
right.
dial-up anymore.
It was like, holy moly.
Now it feels like
Awesome. And so
That's-
they ran them up Biscayne, out to Ponce de Leon, Tropicare, and I think it stops at Sumter, and then some of the side streets on the southern
The
side
reason
of
why I said FCC's
Tropicare.
got a definition for broadband,
Exactly.
but I don't know if FCC's got a definition for non.
It's the functional upload,
DSL is
download.
not.
That's how they
Okay.
define it, is how fast is your upload speed and how fast is your download speed. And that is the defining mark to
Which
say.
people, from what I understand, people who are closer to the big box over on Ponce have a higher speed
Correct.
rate. But the further you go out, if you get to the end of Tropicare, just say Hornbuckle, that's not even the end of that line. But you go to Hornbuckle, they have like nothing. So,
It's not even that area.
It's paying the
Patriot, who was on Toledo Blade.
Right, it goes back.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
had DSL for
Absolutely.
years, haven't
Yep.
paid it, have
And
have it brought in, and they had that scale to look at, to
There's
see.
areas south of
So,
Primary, south
it's-
of.
exactly, it's
So let's
that-
do this,
yeah.
and in order to move forward, can we get direction as what was described here to get those data points and start working on maybe a process where we can present to these companies saying, here's where we're at, this is what you got, we've done the work for you, here's what we're willing to do.
I say yes, not only the data points, but also how we can help with the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it takes
Yeah.
to give that presentation.
The
whole
school
Absolutely.
board.
Legislators,
Yep,
James Buchanan,
Okay.
federal, look at
Can-
whatever kind of stuff.
Can staff explore things other than fiber, like
Go-
wireless?
Absolutely.
5G.
I don't wanna just.
President said
Yeah.
there's 6G,
Yes,
we
I
got
don't wanna-
6G
yeah,
out
I don't
there.
wanna go there. There's a reason Verizon left landlines and fiber, was because they're going, they're going wireless,
There's a lot of
because of that last mile of service.
There's other
You know,
technology
so I would
too.
actually look at that, yeah, you got hairline
So,
fiber, you
and
got twisted
yeah.
fiber, you've
Yeah.
got 5G, you've got.
it's all about access,
Right, that's what we need.
accessibility.
So
whatever
think
it
out of the
is.
box,
Yep.
absolutely.
And,
Is that a good direction for
Can
everybody?
we get clarification?
Clarification on the ability to have our own utility, as far as any of those, because I believe, wasn't it a state law that they passed that had to do with?
Yeah, all the broadband folks said they
high-speed
didn't want cities
internet.
and counties they didn't want competition, so
Right,
they got it passed.
so they got it passed, but it only dealt with.
High speed, I don't know if it dealt with,
I thought it dealt with all
I think
internet
internet.
provider,
See,
but I could be wrong.
I remember it going through, but I can't remember the finite, language.
I think she's just
I do
looking for a
remember whenever
loophole.
they classified.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, I do
that's-
remember when they
See
classified.
if there's something that's vacated out there. Yeah.
Co-ops,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do remember when they classified internet as a utility. It's since, I think it's been repealed from that, I think. But I do remember, I spoke with Jonathan Lewis at the time to look
Yeah.
at how we could utilize the concept of utility. And at that time, through legal, I don't think there was a way that we could recoup anything or anything like it didn't quite fall under the same statutes as water.
And I don't
Had
think,
movement since then.
on lawsuits and so on and
Oh,
so
yeah,
forth.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I think that we need to find more information about that. And then there's the whole co-op idea, that you can create a co-op that you can then inform, in turn, kind of create the utility or the, cable company. I think the lawyer has something to say about
Well,
that.
there's been a lot of movement in this area, and generally, it's to be, it's to be more restrictive, and to allow the cities, less ability. So we can look into whatever you want to, but I don't want to, just to establish expectations. My expectation will be that we can't do anything in
Because
this
that's for
arena.
us to do it.
Yeah.
There's nothing to stop us from doing exactly what our direction was, which is getting
Like the data points.
Yes.
gathering the
Yes.
vendors and then saying, who wants
Of
this
the
deal?
entire city.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's two different things. Let's not get
Yeah.
confused. The data points and the accumulation of, lack of service to enhance the accessibility, also through federal and state funding, whatever that may be, to get that collection of information so that we, can go to these different types of businesses and say, you know, it's all about accessibility. And then the second part is to look at how is it that the government could become the business holder. If they're not going or willing to invest in that infrastructure, then how do we?
Move forward.
Right.
Your
Yeah.
public-private
So,
partnership.
The other thing it would be interesting to see would be like some kind of a map that shows these dead areas and how big they are in these unfunctioning areas. So that way then too, when you have it visually out there, a map showing Northport, and you go, look at all these homes in this area that you're going to get if you put internet service there. That might be part of the data points that we're talking about, but actually having the map showing it out, I think would be really helpful too, so that at some point in the future, we can say,
City
We've
manager
done
has
this
an
one.
appointment coming up.
I know.
And I'd like to
Jason.
keep him here as long as possible.
Can I
So
just
I'd like to
say,
move
Jason,
forward
when
with
we
it.
talk about the
There are
other,
types of accessibility you need to be very careful, because when we talk about the cellular service, there are also blackout areas
there are.
within the city.
yes.
So we
Yeah,
have
that's
to
why I
be
wanna
careful
look at all
about
this.
that. And just, so do we have consensus for the accumulation of data points and then,
Yep.
and then
unanimous.
also the looking into how a city can invest as a communications
Do I have a
provider?
consensus there?
And its
Yes,
information.
about 2
Okay,
years ago.
all right, so, welcome to my world. So then, the other thing was just basically to be aware of the impacts, such as War Mineral Springs on parks, which is not in here. Fire department and police department staffing levels with West Villages and the Braves Stadium. To keep in mind about the fire department and the SAFER grant run out in the 1920 or the 2021 area, which you guys are probably already. Public Works, the big SLU study, what we've already given them information on and the impacts of that, as well as the Biscayne improvements in the landscaping, the impacts of that to us on the budget side of things. Water and sewer expansions, and the youth board, membership to the FLC and NLC. They have those youth councils, and how do we do that, which falls into the next one, which is the board advisor, and what are we gonna do about that for all boards? So did we not have that conversation yet, right? I don't think we have.
We have.
I think we had it on a meeting and then we had to postpone it or something, right? The board advisor, the advisory board, all of them.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about. with
Yeah,
the
I was
advisory
reading.
boards.
whenever you
there
said-
was
Was a staff
There was an
agenda item, correct?
Just
Yeah.
to give you an update, like we had said about, the amount of time that the boards take.
Yeah, it says
Oh,
come
yeah,
back
yeah,
in
yeah.
like 9 months or 3 months.
3 months, but it was brought
Hopefully
up
it's
because I had sat in on one of the meetings and the liaison did not present it properly, so, right,
So-
there's 1 month
Yeah.
out
They
the
gave them a
door.
time frame, 3
I
months.
couldn't remember, I'm just saying that we need to find out what we're gonna do about that, because there may be some financial impacts to that. And then, I already talked about that, but really, to get a general consensus on looking at social services under NDS first. Do we have a consensus to look at the impacts of that and?
I would love that to
Shifting
happen.
of that.
Absolutely, I would too.
I'm trying to understand
I think
why
the
that
flow's
would be
better.
necessary. I think social services is their own unique animal that has to work together with all the other departments. Why would
Well,
we
then it
put
would be
Its
its
own independent department, and then we'd need a director, and we're just, no, we have a manager.
She's a manager. Right now it's a division in,
Yeah, it's different.
right now it's a division of the city manager's office. Social services, that was part of the restructuring this past year. It was prior to that part of general services, but when we eliminated general services and made Parks and Rec department, social services and IT moved under the city manager's department. So they both report to one of the assistant city managers.
Who's the grant writer gonna sit under?
City
The
manager.
city manager's office under assistant city manager, Carrie.
It all ships under an assistant city manager.
Falls with, under that same assistant manager, so, because,
I don't understand why we would shift it and give more responsibilities and more things for NDS to be in charge of when.
well, that's true, you're over NDS, aren't you?
When
Yes.
all these departments should be talking to each other anyhow.
Well, in the real world, doesn't happen.
Well, it
So,
should. So that's not our, that's something the city
anyways,
manager has to solve.
my point is that considering what the needs of this city are and the needs of, social services overall, we are asking just to look at the, placing of social services under NDS. Doesn't mean it's gonna happen, doesn't mean that, but I think that,
You've got your affordable housing and everything that falls into it.
And at
They-
least you could look
Yeah.
at the pros and cons. Just look at it.
Absolutely.
It's information.
So that is a consensus.
okay. Second is the,
Let's see
here,
here.
looking at the Performing Arts Center and having a conversation with the school board to see what they can provide as far as the pool and what we can help with as far as the Performing Arts Center and update to it, or, you know, even help with the ticket booth that may need to be moved because of the school security now. So just kind of look at that to get some communication going to see if we need some capital dollars for that.
Were you here last night or watching it?
I was here.
I was in
We
the
were-
back,
Okay. I was hiding.
You were front row, we were back row.
yeah, we do that.
You must have come in late because they didn't.
They didn't announce either.
Does she come in any other way?
But yeah, they missed you. That's okay, they didn't need to see me.
Oh, I was sitting right
But
there and Debbie
anyways,
kept pointing out.
So can we get consensus on that? Are we okay with that? Again, it's information, but it is something that we need to kind of consider now.
Yep.
That is a
Um,
consensus.
140.
I was gonna say, this rose
We're going over 200.
Hey,
The Dallas White, I guess that'll be, the Dallas White issue, is that going to be handled on the update? I guess that'll be handled on the update of projects,
I
right?
think so.
Okay. And then the East End substation, I don't know, where do we, what would the direction be for that? I don't even know. Unless that's part of the update on projects, or, I'm not,
I think we have to have a bigger conversation on the
Yeah,
East End.
yeah, maybe that
because,
needs to come back as a.
You know, I,
maybe we could
have that conversation of the East End substation slash, community center when we do our capital projects.
and, no,
No,
no.
capital projects in the budget.
Okay,
This-
when we
this
start,
season.
when we have the,
Conversation about the CIP.
That's in April.
how's that?
Yep.
Is that okay?
yeah, because this is a much larger conversation that we
Okay.
need a lot more
All
information.
right, I'm trying to move through. We already got the, internet fiber and then the other was just to be aware of impacts. And then myself personally, how I feel, I would like to see us roll back the rate this year. I think we've got, I know,
Roll back.
shocker, right? I think that the amount of money that we're going to have in this fund balance, and I understand that our goal is to not use fund balance for annual recurring costs, but I personally believe we should be at a 6-7%, that we shouldn't be at 10 and we shouldn't be at 5. And if you consider the 6-7% in the middle, in our general fund balance, our fund balance policy is no lower than 5, no higher than 10. I believe we should be at the 6 to 7 range, okay? Preferably 7. And if you look at that, you're still gonna be having enough money coming in that will come in annually, that will never bring us, you know, below, under, because of growth. Growth is going to impact the taxes. And so if you look at those ad valorums, it's not a year where it's catch up, where we were last year and the year before, that things kind of got slid on the backside and now it's time to catch up. We're here, we're stable, we got this. But by shifting that fund balance requirement from the 10%, you know, and saying, you know, if we handle it at 7% at all times, we're still gonna be fine in our bond rating. And you're not really using your fund balance because you've kind of made this unwritten policy that 7% is good. Does that make sense? I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I feel as though the city's behind in infrastructure and stuff, and that is huge.
Right.
But that stuff can be put in the budget. I mean, you could,
Right.
that's why I said all these things laid out in the beginning, you put it in the budget, that alters your fund balance. So making budgets, you can shift things. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't want to continue to lag behind or go further behind in the infrastructure and stuff.
And I agree with that. And that's why I'm saying I think that if we kind of stuck with that fund balance being somewhere between the 6 to 7% versus the 5% or versus the 10%, I think we're still going to bring in enough to provide for us to do these capital improvements that are necessary, as well as those items that are already currently kind of projected. So, did I mention War Mineral Springs? Yes, I did. Okay, all right.
Very good. I'm done now.
Sorry.
Anybody else?
A few things, and the first one's, every commissioner will probably smile. I think we need to discuss the expense amount for commissions. It's at that 8,400 for years and years and years, and those hotel expenses and stuff continue to go up. I'd like to see it increase by probably $500. You know, instead of the 84, have it 89.
I think we need to find out what our realistic
number is.
Yeah, our realistic numbers are, because it used to be 10. And we need to figure out what it is that, because we are all doing things that commissioners, yes, the other commissioners did not do.
Yeah,
So,
A lot of them stayed local.
She and I slid in. She slid in real good. I slid in just over about $100 or so.
I came
And-
in negative.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, and that is working, you know, what we did, and I scaled down, man. I would fly in just before the event started and cutting everything, not even accepting, you know, the pay on some of the things. And so I think it's something we need to look at, because when a hotel is $289 a night, that's crazy. And it wasn't 10 years ago or whatever when they put it that way. So I think that needs to be looked at in the budget.
Is the commission can use city vehicles to go to these further away places instead of the $400 thing to go to Tallahassee for a personal vehicle. Use a city vehicle. That will help save money. You know.
Sarasota flew. They put all of their
Yes,
commissioners in a
fly.
plane and
We used to
flew.
fly.
But
But
it was
somehow
cheaper to
this,
It was cheaper to do mileage than to put us all on a flight with travel and everything like, it was all
To
explained.
Tallahassee?
To Tallahassee. It
yeah,
was.
we used to fly out of Venice Airport, and it was cheaper that way than it was for mileage. But then again, we always went under the federal mileage number, so it may have been higher in the mileage
Over the next
back
few
then.
years, that may turn back
It may
around
turn
with,
back around,
with,
yeah.
with the flights going down.
So-
This specific time they looked at it.
I think consensus should be had, absolutely, to look at our expense travel monies and budgeted higher, you know, at least.
Well, and another specific in there too is with the mayor, he has to go and do extra stuff, or she has to go and do extra stuff above and beyond a regular commissioner. So if we're falling short.
not
Yeah,
necessarily.
Not all
I
the
mean,
time.
Because there's
no,
some-
a mayor,
there's
a
some-
mayor is only a commissioner.
Correct.
And actually, a mayor can't do anything without the rest of the commission directing them to do so.
I don't think that's what he's saying.
No, I'm
I
not
think,
saying-
yeah, I think he's
I'm
saying there's
there
a.
are other
right.
events.
I will tell you that as mayor, and once you are, you'll know that you get a lot more requests just because you're the face of the
Right.
city.
Even
Of
local.
which case, that's why we have a vice mayor. If I can't make it,
right.
or if the vice mayor can't, we have other commissioners to be able to do that, like you and Pete did at the same
But
time.
that's in the city.
We know.
Convocation
Oh,
of government
yeah,
is not.
Sarasota once a month.
The League of Cities, Mayor's League of Cities, nationally, all those mayoral things are not.
Makes
So-
you go in.
Which, by the way-
Maybe a day ahead of time or so, you know, to get into that mayor meeting, you know, at the
By the way,
national.
the Mayor League of Cities was in Honolulu this year, I'll have you know, but it was gonna eat up everything ahead, so mayor's
All I
not
was
going this year.
All I was suggesting on that was just to take a look at it and see if there was any variance and see if that needed adjusting. That's all I was looking
I
at.
think you're bringing, you know, looking at that information to see what's
So I think
realistic.
that's a
Yeah,
good
that needs to be
direction.
looked at.
Let's take a look at
Absolutely.
the information for that. Good.
I'd like to say no, because I really think that we need to start utilizing the resources that taxpayers are already using. Use the city vehicles instead of our personal vehicles to go to these meetings. That will cut out a lot of the expenses that everybody's talking about.
Okay,
So I'm no.
Okay.
What else?
so we have a consensus.
Yes.
I would also like to see in the budget, preparation for the big kickoff shebang, welcome to the Braves next season. I think there needs to be some funds put in the budget,
Oh,
for us,
opening day.
for opening. Well,
Correct.
exactly, to the season. We talked about having something big, so we need some money in the budget in order to do that.
Absolutely. And I think we also talked about doing that and having it part and parcel to like kicking off our 60th anniversary. Didn't we have that conversation?
We had a conversation.
Okay, awesome.
So we've got that one.
So that's good.
I would,
Yeah, let me get a consensus on everyone look at that.
I think we've had it before. I think it was part of a conversation sometime prior.
but we're talking about budget.
Right.
I
Just
don't
for
want to
the-
have to say, you know, we need an adjustment.
Absolutely
You know,
right. It's
When the
my
assistant city
initiative.
manager
All
asked,
those.
do we have it? I want to go
Yeah.
ahead and get it, just so that way we have clarification. So you have a consensus.
Yes.
Got it.
Nonprofits within the city, and I know, I believe Commissioner Carazone has had this discussion previously in commissions. They are tax exempt,
Yes.
but
They use the assets of,
our fire, police, and stuff like that, and right now don't pay for those services. That's not on their tax bill, what I'm learning. So they could have fire, police, those type of services, not pay for it, but everybody else does. So maybe that's a conversation, you know, for us to discuss. I believe it came up years ago and it was shot down because there was a big uproar that nonprofits shouldn't pay anything. Tax, I understand, you know, they're tax-free, but service-free from the districts, I don't know.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you
Are you
talking about
talking about if
special
they have a
events?
special event?
No, just, I think
Just general
services
tax,
in.
non-ad valorem
yeah, general-
taxes.
you're
Talking
talking
about like if Kiwanis that doesn't have a
No.
physical
No,
address?
I'm talking about the church or.
The ad
Oh, we had a
valorem,
big lawsuit on that. There's nothing we can do about that.
You can't,
Certain ones
you
you
can't
can't.
charge real estate taxes,
I-
but you can
it
charge
sounds like-
district taxes.
Sounds like to me what you're looking at is, since they're not paying those taxes, why are we giving them free services, like if they need to utilize a facility? I mean, where,
Well, they would call fire department or police department, but they're, by calling them, that's a free service to them because they're nonprofit.
what do you want
But
to look
yet-
at?
Exempt.
Do we,
Is what the
do we,
word is.
okay, do we want to look at continuing nonprofits to be exempt from those types of services by the districts?
I think we need to find out the legality of, I see what you're saying. Okay, so so the question is, can we find out the legality of charging district fees to nonprofits, those that are freestanding, Right, those that are
With a
freestanding and
physical.
those that have a facility, you know, a physical facility and the address in the city of North.
Are you talking about the assessments?
Yeah.
Okay.
The road drainage fire
Okay.
assessment.
Right.
That, I believe the
Yeah, I'm
lawsuit
sorry
you're
if I
referring
made
to.
that convoluted.
But thank
I was
you
like,
Yeah.
for understanding.
I believe the lawsuit you're referring to, because I know we discussed this the last time we did a fire
Ad
methodology,
forums.
is I believe what you could charge them on, you could not charge them on was the sanctuary building. And I don't know that this applies to, off the top of my head, the road and drainage and certainly not the solid waste, but the fire assessment, I don't believe you could assess them on the sanctuary, but any outbuildings, like if they have a daycare or a assembly room or something, those could be charged. And the conversation, I believe where you're leading towards, I don't remember off the top of my head, because it's been a few years,
That
but
was
I
a while
believe we had a discussion on whether to exempt those as well. I think that's where, if I'm not mistaken, going to where you're heading of, you want to have a conversation of, should the things we're legally allowed to assess be assessed if we currently have exemptions? I think
makes
as
sense.
summarizing what you're trying
And I'm
to.
okay with that.
say.
You got
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, I think it's, again, it's information, you know, and we have to find out the update on the law, because I know what you're talking about, to see if that still stands and.
Yeah, and I remember Chief
And-
Taft was standing there
yeah.
stating, you know, the whole
That was a
conversation
long
about,
time ago.
well, he did it again during the last methodology that he did as well.
Oh, that was, yeah.
Which was
that
just a few years ago.
none of us
But
were here.
I remember the conversation was about the sanctuary building versus the other buildings.
Gotcha.
The focus was on churches, but obviously we have more than churches in the city that are nonprofits.
Do they pay for solid waste, or do they
Yes.
have to have like roll-offs?
Well, they would still pay for that,
Right.
but they pay for it. I'm pretty sure they pay for solid waste fees.
So we have a
I
consensus.
don't think they pay anything, to be honest with you, but.
No, they
don't
pay
check that.
something, but.
But we do have a consensus
Yeah.
for
Check
getting
the
that
legalities
information
of
and check the
that.
legality.
Yep.
Ms. Luke, do you have anything else?
Yes, sir.
We had a citizen write us about the sidewalks going from Skyview out towards 75. Is that in a CIP project at any point? There's children that gather for school. Yes, going out Ponce de Leon.
We have, yeah, those are things that.
There's an ongoing sidewalk project. I'll
We
see
We
if,
have so much budget every year for that.
I thought I had seen where there
I'll
was
check
something
and see
like
if that
that.
specific area, what year that's in the plan.
What was it, Skyview to I-75?
On Ponce. There are children that walk along the grass to go to their bus stop,
Over the
so.
bridge, yep,
It's a pretty bad area.
Yeah.
I agree.
The two things that I recall from that board, again, was the litter signs in the irrigation project on 41.
Yeah, they can't put litter signs up because of all the other signs that it's distracting. We got a memo on that. I'm telling you,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah, I
memo
remember
we
the memo, yeah,
got from
just-
staff,
just
that
recently.
FDOT is not going to put up litter signs because of the distraction of all the other signs
Too
that
close
are
together.
necessary.
That was FDOT, I believe that was our staff that stated that.
They said that it was from FDOT, so.
City manager?
We'll verify for you just to make sure, but, you know, I believe they checked with FDOT, but we'll check it. I'll verify and I'll let you all know.
The memo, we just got like last
The memo
week,
was from
week
us.
before. It was
I'm not
just
gonna-
recently.
yeah, that I
it's
know.
probably like
We-
within the last month, they
Yeah.
used the last batch that Carrie sent out.
The last batch of 75.
Because the same thing was stated with the Sand Hill cranes, and we just had them bring out Sand Hill cranes, and it was the same excuse given.
That was a city
don't-
road versus a state road.
You don't have, yeah, but you can put litter signs on city roads too, it doesn't have
We
to be.
can't put them on the city road
Okay.
because FDOT didn't want litter signs on their road because of all the other signs that are required to be out there.
Okay, I would just like to see,
Believe me, I'm all for the litter signs, trust me on that, but
okay,
FDOT kind of trumps what we can do, but we can put litter signs all over the city if we want.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be looked into again. And then the irrigation project that they have for their beautification. But we'll probably discuss that in April.
Speaking of irrigation projects, what in the blazes is going on with the irrigation for I think it's Sumter and Toledo Blade? did they ever get the irrigation fixed?
We'll get you all an update on that. I know that they've been working on it.
This has been going on almost 2 years.
Mhm.
Either we need to find a competent irrigation company that can assess the problems and get it resolved, or somebody is getting paid for not doing anything. And it's starting to clean up.
Can we check on, also Plantation and Panacea? Because those two have irrigations and that was taken over by Woodlands, and I'm not sure where we are on that, because I don't think the irrigation's working there either.
And that is their responsibility to maintain. They've had conversations with us about wanting us to take it over.
Mm-hmm.
We asked them for we
already
gave
done
them a lot of
what we did.
direction on that, of what they need to do.
Okay, so
The
I
irrigation-
guess
Have it up and running.
maybe an
Yes.
update on that,
Yep.
if we could. Thank you.
So, get a consensus to get updates on the things that were mentioned, are we good? So that way we're not, no one person's directed.
I appreciate that.
Wonderful. Commissioner Luke, do you have anything else?
I
Running into hard
have,
time constraint.
My fault.
Got 50 minutes still.
I
I was just trying to hurry before he had to leave, but, I mean, just.
I'll be good.
do you have to leave before noon?
I'll be fine.
Sure.
Yep.
I led the Leadership Northport Eco-Tourism and Stuff event, and the Find Bait and Tackle helped us out. They brought up, I thought, an excellent idea, and that is, because we have so many canals, why not have a fishing tournament on the canals? Other cities do it. They actually host or help provide these tournaments in other cities. And what a great showcase, for our canals. Problem is the ramps, obviously, going into the canals cannot be used by public.
Oh, you mean like actually going in canoes or something and doing a fishing tournament? Because we do the annual fishing tournament. We used to do an annual fishing clinic.
Clinic, there's not a
No, we
tournament
do the fishing
where
tournament.
these guys would pay money to come in and they,
Thinking kids fishing on
no,
the
no,
side.
no, no,
like,
I'm talking about,
Yeah, full on.
Full-fledged fishing
Full-fledged,
tournament.
yes.
Yes.
But we don't
that
have any
again is another
motorboats.
sport
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
would
say
be
that.
adding to
the city, and it would be
But we
utilized.
can't use motorboats in some of our canals,
Yeah.
correct?
pretty much
All of them.
Is pontoon boat considered
I was
a
about
boat?
to ask that because we saw
It is
pontoon, I
a
didn't know
destination.
where exactly that was
It's
shooting.
basically for engine and oil runoff. It's
Exactly.
the waterways, so if a
Exactly.
pontoon boat, if it has an engine, it's still a motorboat. But you
Yes.
could
Right.
have a kayak fishing tournament
Right.
or a
Exactly.
canoe fishing
Yeah,
tournament.
you can't have
You
both.
could implement that, but
But the
depends on the
canal
waterway.
over off
But I
of
did see a
Safford
post.
Terrace
And I was,
can
That's-
have motor boats because
Yeah.
and back
And you
there
can-
behind the V or the
The-
Legion,
no, the AMVET, so
AMVETS, in that area,
that's all
it
part of the
leads to the
river.
Gulf and the river, so that would be a good place for a motor boat.
If you want a
I just
motorboat.
thought it was
A great idea,
No, I
be a new sport, it'd be something new within the city. We have a lot of fishing people, fishermen, fisherwomen. It's a
But
great
would they
sport.
do it in the canal as a tournament? I mean, when
They
I
do
see-
Well,
in
if
other
they're showing the
cities.
interest, they can start it out that
do it,
way.
they do it.
The other cities, and it's huge.
Yeah.
So,
I think the only constraints we would have is whether or not you can use a motor or not. But I think we have a lot of locals that would be more than willing to do.
Put it
kayaks
together,
or
develop
canoes
it.
and-
Oh, they come in tomorrow.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just mean, for kind of, because we can't have the motorboats in a lot of our canals. So that's why I was saying that might hinder some of those outside people coming. Definitely our locals would get it.
Well, that's worth getting.
That committee
It would all
together
depend on what species they're trying to catch as
Mhm.
well. You're not gonna go out and go shark fishing
They
in
talk
there,
about
yeah.
like in Coco Plum,
yeah,
because you can't with the motorboat.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Actually, I was out.
and a gentleman had a canoe and had a little motor on it when we
Oh,
were
well, yeah,
cleaning
like
it
a
up.
trolling motor.
Exactly.
It's
Battery
yeah,
powered.
absolutely.
Battery powered.
Just not a gas motor.
But it's
Not,
not,
I mean, it'd be something just to look into, but the ramps going into these canals would have to be addressed. That's why I was bringing it up at this point in time, strategic planning. If we did go that direction, you'd have to look at the ramps within the city too. The last two things are coming up from year before last.
Can we get a consensus?
On that, to look at the infrastructure of ramps in the city for access of the canals for the public.
I like that.
Because it falls
It's right in with our blue ways, green ways
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I am, yes.
No.
Again, it's information.
We didn't say budget
We've
for
got
it,
so much information that we are still waiting for from years ago, and now we're just adding to the list of information that it's, at some point, we have to just say, not now. I'm not saying no, I'm saying not now.
Right, well, we have
Yes, no.
consensus, so.
Consensus,
Yes.
consensus, okay. So that is.
It fits into the blue ways. But 2 years ago, we talked about flags along 41, and we talked about
For that
the
information.
welcome signs out there too. And I know we were gonna wait until the construction was done on 41, but I just wanted to bring them up so that when construction does finish, we can, you know, keep a focus on those. Those were driven by citizens also.
Get an update on that?
Do you have an update on
On the construction.
No,
No,
signs and welcome.
Signs,
Oh.
flags.
Oh, the
and-
flags.
The flags, we've had some struggles. I know that we've had flags up before on the lights. When we asked recently about putting flags up there, we were told, we're still looking into it more, that FDOT actually doesn't want any flags on any of those places, even where we've had them in the past. Because they're,
Now, is that going across every municipality, or is that just our municipality?
I think they just don't like us.
Oh,
Just
shocker.
kidding. No. The FD.
I just didn't know if it was a
We're
policy
trying to get
change.
something formal written from FDOT. If they're gonna say no, I would like it in writing that they've said no.
Yeah, because you can go down Arcadia and
Yep.
see 70.
Mhm.
That's
They want the
nonsense.
poles designed to be able to handle the wind load of having the flag on, at least that's what they told our staff.
Yep.
Okay,
So-
and yet they're hurricane resistant.
Uh-huh.
Just telling
And I
you.
can't
And they
hold a
think we
flag.
believe that.
Messengers over here.
That affects our
That affects our
Christmas
ability.
decorations too.
But see,
Yep.
the other thing is if FDOT is saying no, that you can't have them on 41, there's nothing stopping us from putting them on Sumter.
On our own road.
Yeah, what about the coloring, remember we talked about getting a cost of how much it would be to change those ugly silver things to green, the city center green, remember that?
We had a conversation, I think the commission said no to that because it required,
Just to get the
Cost. You brought the cost back and,
I don't remember. But it
They
was,
might be
because
needing that.
I
on
think
top
it
of that,
was
we
a
then have to take,
3-2. 3 people said yes, bring back the costs, and 2 people said
I think that was where I said one of my first decisions I regretted, which was not
Right.
going
Yes,
with
it
the
is.
green.
Yes,
Which was
it
not going
is.
with the green, and now when I drive through it, just drives me crazy.
Because-
So,
yeah.
yeah, I think
It was a 3-2.
that was a 3-2, and
I
I
was
think
on
you
the
and I
voting side.
were on the yes. and
But I
it
do
was a
remember that.
3 for no.
So we're
So-
waiting for the costs.
Okay.
See,
Right, we
again,
are waiting on
we're
the cost,
waiting
right?
for more
Yeah.
information.
okay,
Okay. So we'll get
So
that
we'll
update.
get
costs on that.
Just takes a very long time to get information, and
Well, poor Carrie's doing all she
Is that all,
can.
Ms. Lee? Okay.
it's
We have a
not-
list, but it's stuff I'll go over with city manager.
Vice Mayor, do you have anything?
Yeah, I know we had talked about looking at impact fees. I'd like to see that conversation sooner than later because I think it will impact our budget and our conversation with budget. And I think we even gave a deadline of April. I just want to make sure that we're going to be having this conversation with the impact fees.
Did we get the information?
That we get that information sooner so that we have it for this conversation come budget time.
Just an update on where we are on the impact fee stuff.
So, because I think if we put our impact fees where they belong and get the businesses that are coming in and creating this additional impact, we'll be able to do a lot of these sidewalks and road improvements that we need to have done.
If I may just interject a point of information on that topic, we're working on the impact fee ordinance and NDS is working on the numbers for you all. It does require a 90-day notice. So second reading is being noticed for June 11th of 2019. I'm not sure when it's going to come back for first reading, but you won't take final action on that until June under state statute.
Okay, so is that 90-day notice from the date of first reading?
No, it's from the date of notice. So we are noticing it so that you can take final action at second reading on
Okay.
June 11th, and they'll go into effect upon the
So when,
adoption of the ordinance.
I'm not familiar with the process of releasing, so you publicly noticed a 90-day notice that we are considering raising impact fees?
We are noticing the ordinance, that you will take final action on the ordinance on June 11th, 2019.
You don't have to have a notice for your first meeting, it's that second meeting,
That's-
because
okay.
nobody
Right, 48 hours
has two
is for the
meetings.
That's
Right,
right.
so-
Very rare.
That's a good clarification. Under state law, what it requires, just in general for all the ordinances, is that they be noticed, general, not impact fees, at least 10 days before adoption.
Okay.
There's not a requirement that you notice it before first or second reading specifically. So we're noticing now that second reading for June 11th, because that's the fastest that we can
Okay,
get
so
it to you.
what if, and this is just for point of my information, what if it doesn't go through that we're raising impact fees? Then that notice is like voided, correct?
The notice has been provided,
Okay.
That you can- that you're
And no
considering
action's
it.
taken, okay.
correct?
And does it give notice of what action is being taken, or just we are considering changing, is it a broad?
It's the notice of every notice for the ordinance includes the title block of the ordinance. And because you've not heard this one for first reading, the title block will be very general regarding amendments to Chapter 58, Article 2 or 3, whichever one relates to impact fees. And that way you guys can take whatever action you need to related to impact fees.
Gotcha. I know time is of the essence, and I will be very short and brief with this comment. I am going to be looking for more focus on infrastructure than fluff. I am going to be looking at, come budget time, looking at possibly reducing the expenses, the everyday, day-to-day operational expenses in the city proper with the departments, to try and eliminate some waste, try and cut back on things, kind of rein in bring it in a little bit so that we can focus then on the infrastructure. And I know infrastructure and operations are totally different things, but I am going to be focusing more on the infrastructure and trying to get more infrastructure stuff done and focusing on less waste. So that's in general it. I can't give specifics at an assumptions meeting, but that's where my area of focus is going to be, because these past couple of years I've seen a lot of areas of waste in general operations that I don't think have been reined in.
Okay.
Speaking about infrastructure, that 1.4 million made it through the first committee, didn't it?
Mhm.
Yes, it did.
I had a citizen contact me, as a matter of fact, yesterday, with an idea. I told him I would share it. I don't know how it will go through, but he is suggesting maybe a shoulder, so that when the mailman comes off.
Like a bike lane?
No, hell no, not like a bike lane.
Couldn't help
And you
myself.
wanna know what exactly I said to him? I go, do you realize that I am against all bike lanes? He goes, it's not a bike lane, it's a shoulder. I said, please tell me how big your shoulder is that you're looking for. And he said 3 to 4 feet. I said, that's a bike lane.
I'm not as wide
I
as
know
a
you
bike
love
lane.
bike lanes.
So it just irritates me to hear, and I explained to him about having the, for runoff and all that stuff. He says, please mention it. I did. He thinks that shoulders would be very beneficial in the city as we continue to grow with all of our traffic.
Well, shoulders are a lot.
To me,
in
shoulder
the-
is only like this.
Well, I come from the north.
Understand it.
I come from the north, and there are shoulders, but the makeup of the earth is totally different. I mean, this
Yeah.
is a sponge that we live on. And so it makes a little more sense to have a shoulder, up north than what it does
Well,
down
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
It's all about runoff
But
and
the
stuff up
shoulder is
north,
to
where
help keep
here it's
the
not.
mailman off a little bit on the side of the road and stuff like that. And I get the idea. I obviously am not for a 4-foot shoulder. That to me is not a shoulder. A shoulder is like this.
Well, my mailbox sits back, and the
Everybody
mailman,
have to move all their
exactly, the
mailboxes.
mailman has to drive in a little bit, but it keeps him off of the road, or not completely off the road, but you know, he swings. I don't make the mailman sit in the middle of the road to reach into my
Well, it
mailbox.
would
It
depend
sits
on
back.
area too, 'cause if you're in my area, I've got underground drainage, so all they have is a little bit of concrete, and then my mailbox is right up to the concrete, so they're running on the road regardless. So it depends on area.
I did my duty, said I would mention it. Done?
Done? Commissioner Emmerich?
Oh, I'm done.
Okay, and I'm done. City manager, you have anything?
That's it, that's what we needed.
All right. Commission have any communications, or did we do all that last night?
We did it last night.
Yeah, we did it last night, I do believe.
I thought the meeting with the school board was superb last night. I felt so proud of our education. It's great.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks for hanging in there, staff. Dealing with it.